Welcome everybody to this new episode of Spanish Loops. Hola Jorge, are you
Hola,
there?
Francisco. How are you doing? Yes, I am. I'm here. How are you doing? Everything
Doing
okay?
fantastic. Super happy to be talking about today's topic, which I
Hmm.
think for both of us, it's one of the places in Spain that is a must visit. Today,
And yeah,
today we're going to be talking about the Alhambra complex. Let's not just say palace complex in the
yeah,
beautiful city of Granada.
yeah, that's right. Yes, isn't it beautiful?
I think it's, to me, it's really one of those breathtaking sites in
Mm,
Spain that really is worth visiting Spain just to see the Alhambra.
I agree, totally, totally agree with that. That because uh, it's not just the inside; it's also the outside, especially the view from the other hill. You've been in Granada, right? Many
Yeah.
times,
Mhm.
like you normally say, 100,000 million times.
Well, the thing is that every time you go to, I don't want to say just to Alhambra, Granada itself,
Yeah.
it's a city that
Mhm.
it's it has a very special vibe into it. It's a little bit hippie. It's a little bit of Muslim heritage with the Spanish heritage. It's a beautiful mixture of cultures and attitudes, and it's a college town, I would say. So there's a lot of young
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
It's very
yeah.
vibrant.
Yeah, the
And then
university, especially the medicine university, right? Or
medical school is
University
very
of
good.
Medicine is very prestigious down there. Many studies from many, with cooperation with many universities from all over the world, they're taking place there now with the new technologies and especially the intelligence, artificial intelligence. They are making huge progresses. So that makes Granada, besides the Alhambra, also a very important site because of these new projects that they're taking over.
Well, yeah, I mean, Granada is worth visiting. But today, we want to take our listeners to the beautiful Alhambra.
Hmm. That's
It's
right.
not going to be just a historical tour through the Alhambra because it has a lot of history around it, but we also want to share with you the beauty, the feeling, the vibe of this magnificent, magnificent construction.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
Jorge, shall we start a little bit with, yes, of course, a little bit of history?
a little bit of history, of course, as usual. Yeah, well, Alhambra. The word Alhambra by itself means the Red Castle. So if you've seen it, anyone out there who's listening to us, you know exactly what it means or what we're talking about, the Red Castle. For those who haven't yet, because we have the hope that at least once in your life, if you have a chance, you're going to make it, you will understand perfectly what it says. And the history is very much linked to the geographical place where it's located. It's, um, it's in a rocky hill. I mean, Granada has three hills, okay? The Albaicin, the Sacromonte, and the Alhambra Hill. So
Mhm.
um, it was a very rocky hill, and it was a very difficult the access to the top, and it's on the banks of the river, which is called Darro, Dlrro. So you have to roll the R, Darro.
Garro, garro.
And the complex right now is protected by the mountains and surrounded by forest, and it's one of the oldest neighborhoods of the city. And it rises like an imposing castle of reddish tones in its walls that hide the delicate beauty of the interior from the outside. Francisco, it was conceived first not as a palace. It was conceived first as a military area. Then it became a royal residence and also the court of Granada. We're talking in the around the mid 13th century after the establishment of the Nasrid kingdom and the construction of the first palace by the founding king Mohammed, also known as Al-Ahmar. So all through the 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries, the fortress became a citadel. Obviously, when you buy something in the top of a hill and you have the possibilities to enlarge the complex, that's exactly what they did. So they had the military zone, which was the Alcazaba. Then they have the barracks of the royal guards and the Medina or the Palatine city. That's how it was called at the time. Then there is another complex down there, up there, I better say up there in the hill,
Up there.
up there, which is the palace of Charles V, which was built after the capture of the city in 1492 by the Catholic monarchs. And it's just by the Medina. Okay, so let's remind our listeners here that Charles V was the grandson of the Catholic monarchs. That happened, one of the Habsburgs, the first of the Habsburgs. Okay. Also, this complex, this monumental, I mean, it's mammoth. You cannot go there. If you go on your own, I'm pretty sure you're going to be embraced by everything. And if you get the audio guide, you're going to be there for hours. But if you just go into a small or medium-sized group with your private guide, obviously they're going to tell you everything. They cannot shout out loud anymore inside of these complexes, and especially in the Alhambra. Imagine the amount of people that goes in there. So everybody has a whisper, and the guide is transmitting all the information. So you can take your time and maybe move a little bit away from the group to take the photo that you want, etc., etc. So I mean, it's so huge and big, but also the complex has an independent palace, totally separated out of it, which is right in front, in the top of a hill, and is surrounded by orchards and gardens, and it was the solace of the kings of Granada, the Generalife Gardens. Okay, how would you translate the Generalife Gardens, Francisco?
No, I really don't know. Is there a translation for Generalife?
I mean, if you read it, if you read the word, it's general life in English. But if you put it together in Spanish, it's Generalife. Okay. So Generalife. It's like Jorge, my name, the same.
And some people says it's the name of Garden of the Poets or the Artists. I just think it's the most.
Yeah, but there is so many theories about that. That's anyway, just keep it on the name as it is, and Generalife. Right. And also a little curiosity about the name Alhambra, which I said to you that is the Red Castle. Some people say it has the origins in an Arabic word meaning the red or vermilion castle. So that's
it's
another of the
reddish.
theory.
So...
Yeah, it is, oh yeah, it's reddish. It's like bricks. Okay, so bricks gives that color. And as I said, originally it was created for military purpose, and the Alhambra was an alcazaba, a fort, an alcázar, a palace, okay, and a small medina, which Medina means literally the city, all at the same time. And the triple character, the triple character maybe help us to understand the large number of characteristics of this monument. Okay, so if you can put all that together, you get it. But obviously, it is so huge, so beautiful, so impressive. Jaw drops moments, places where you can just want to stay and stare around and look everything. It's really hard to put into words the beauty of this complex. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about, Francisco.
Well, one of the things I think makes sense what you're explaining is that if you've never been to Alhambra, our listeners need to understand that it is not one monument. It's a royal city, a walled royal city.
Yeah.
You have the royal palace, you have the army who defend the it's not a king because it's a Muslim. You also have
it was an emir,
It's an emir.
EMIR, which is the equivalent to a king.
Royals here.
Yeah, royals.
So you have the royal palace where they live, where the guards live, the citadel, the fortification. Then you have all the people working for them living in the Medina
Correct.
And then you need to supplies. So you're going to have all of these beautiful gardens where they're going to provide tomatoes and lettuce and carrots and the whole thing. So
well, they even have their own farming fields inside of the complex.
So, I mean, it's just a huge, beautiful monument. When one of the things I don't want to scare people about is when we say that it's huge,
don't scare the people.
But here we are saying it's big, it's huge, blah, blah, blah. Don't freak out. It's doable. It's not that you're gonna be exhausted. No. It's gonna be beautiful, as you said, Jorge. Take your time. To me, when the Muslims, the Moors, the Arabs, whatever you want to call them, came into Spain, you have to think that we have here in Spain the Visigoths, which are very austere, and they don't have you know, that embrace for life. They brought that beautiful embrace for living and, make life beautiful and great and fascinating. So the Alhambra is all about that beauty. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, we have done a podcast talking about the gardens in Spain, and one of them was, of course, the
The
gardens of the
Alhambra.
Alhambra.
Yeah.
But the gardens are incredible. But when you go into the rooms, when you go into the royal room, when you go to it, everything, it's delicate, and the way they treat the light, how the light comes in, how the heat and the coolness works in the place, the sound of the water running.
Mm.
I think it's the pleasure of living. I mean, the Court of the Lions, the famous
Yeah. That's
courtyard
right.
where you have
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fountain
Yeah.
of the lions.
But Francisco, let's go step by step, as you said earlier. I mean, we're talking about the history of the Alhambra, etc. You know that it was the how you call it, the dynasty of the series, Ziries, those monarchs that they were probably the emirs, again, that word, also known as monarchs, Arabic monarchs, that they built the Alhambra beginning in the year 1238. Okay, so at the very beginning it was just a fortress, but what the concept of the Alhambra, what it is today, is started in 1238. So now the construction of all the palaces called the Old Royal House. It dates back to the 14th century, and it was the works of two great kings, Yusuf the First and Mohammed the Fifth. The first is awarded, among others, as the Cuarto de Comares, the Puerta de la Justicia, and Baños, the baths, and some towers. His son, Mohammed the Fifth, was he completed totally, the embellishments of all the palaces with the Hall of the Lions, the one that you were talking about, as well as all the rooms and fortifications. So, in total, if we consider the parts of the Alhambra, it is divided in five places. So one of them is let's say, because it's the first thing that you see, sorry, when you get there, which is the Palace of Charles V. Once the last emir surrendered and the Catholic monarchs entered the city in 1492, his grandson Charles V ordered the construction of a palace down there. It's a huge fortification which is right opposite the Tower of the Medina. Then you have the Medina per se. So there is the second part of the complex. Then you have something called Rauda, Rauda. That is the cemetery. It used to be there. Of course, if you had a citadel, you had to have a place where to bury the people. That makes
Yeah.
sense. And then you have the Nasrid palaces. Those were the ones who started, in the 1200s, 1300s, etc., etc. You have the Generalife Gardens. And then you have the Alcazaba fortification. So it makes in total not five, as I said, six complexes in the entire huge Alhambra palaces. And it became a Christian court, as I mentioned before, in 1492, when the Catholic monarchs conquered Granada. Several structures were built there to house prominent citizens, military barracks, a church, and a Franciscan monastery.
I don't know how to say to our listeners that it is so beautiful that
Mm.
when the Isabella and Ferdinand took over it, they could not put it down. Many cases when you have one civilization taking over the next civilization, they take everything from the old one. The Catholic monarchs really, they embraced this beauty and they preserved it. I mean, it was incredible. In fact, Isabella, the Catholic queen, she wanted to be buried in the Alhambra. And in fact, she was for a little bit until they moved her out to the Royal Chapel, also in Granada.
And that's a funny curiosity, because in that Franciscan monastery that I was mentioning earlier, that's where she was buried. That's true. You're right. Absolutely right. Two curiosities about that, Francisco. That monastery now is one of those beautiful paradores that we have in Spain. Have you slept
Okay,
there anytime?
this one is not one of those beautiful paradores. This is the beautiful parador.
It is the beautiful Parador, yeah. The cuisine there is absolutely fantastic. The site you are in the Alhambra complex. Okay, one thing that, and I think we mentioned that in one of our podcasts about hotels or city specials or some of those, is that yeah, it's incredible to stay there just because of the site. The only thing that might put some people off to stay there is it is completely outside of everything. I mean, you have to have a car, which I do not recommend that at all to go into the city. In this case, downtown, because it's on the at the end of the valley. But walking distance is like about. I mean, it's a very intense slope going down and going up again, but it's just barely like about half a mile only. But just take a taxi. It's gonna cost
There we
you
go. I
what,
mean,
6, 7, 8 euros
yeah,
for four
taxis
people
in
can get in
Granada.
a yeah, yeah.
I mean, taxis in Granada work super, super well. And
Oh yeah,
from
absolutely.
the city center of Granada all the way to the Alhambra, as you
Yeah,
said, 8 euros, if so. So
yeah.
it's
If so,
not
that's
worth
right.
it getting
That's
a
right.
car because driving in all of these little towns and
Yeah.
narrow alleys is like, forget it.
Narales, yeah. You
Take
also
a
have a
taxi.
you also have a minibus service that goes up and down constantly. Obviously not at nighttime. When I say nighttime, I be from midnight up until 6 in the morning. Okay, but the rest of the day you have no problem at all. Another little curiosity I want to mention is that regarding um, she being buried in there while the royal chapel was finished in the cathedral of what it was going to be the cathedral in Granada in the future. Um, I mean, you can actually see and enter the site, although it's in the complex of the Parador, and it is considered a national monument or national heritage thing and historical. Uh, don't be shy. You just go in. You have signs to go and see exactly the place where she was buried for a certain period of time before she was moved together with her husband that survived her. She died before to the Royal Chapel. And of course, now that we're talking about the Royal Chapel, only just a couple of words here to mention that it is worth visiting. It is
Yes.
small. It's a different entrance to the cathedral, so it means that it's a different fee. Okay,
Different ticket, meaning if you want to
different
see the
ticket
cathedral, you have one
exactly.
ticket. If you
Yeah,
want to see the Royal
but
Chapel,
now
you
you
pay another one.
you know what, Francisco? Now they've become so modern that when you pay, they used to have the audio guides that's, other kind of phone set, if you want to call it like that. But now what they do is that you pay your fee, and now they have a big QR code. And then with that QR code, you just tap on it, and you can hear your own phone
On your telephone.
the what used to be the audio guide. The visit won't be longer than 20-25 minutes in there, but
Ah,
it is a beauty. You need to go and see because it's related to the history of the Alhambra. And Francisco, I think with this I'm saying, is there anything else that you want to add?
yes, I want to ask you one thing.
Oh,
Okay.
goodness. Wait a minute. Let me drink a little bit of water. You made the question. Come
No, no,
on.
no. About regarding the Alhambra, if
Mm.
you need to choose one site, maybe one room, one thing that is for you breathtaking, that the first time you saw it, you were blown away, and every time you see it, you're still blown away. What that single thing would be? That's a
I
difficult one.
No, 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 it's not difficult. It's not difficult because I have no idea how many photos I have of that corner. Where that corner is the patio of the lions.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times you go there. We have been there many times,
Yeah.
okay? Both of us. Um, but I have to tell you, whether it is with people around, whether it is an angle that you can approach and get just the head of one lion, or maybe if you like photography, maybe get some perspective. I'm very much into photography, and now with these phones that we have in our hands, I mean, it's just so easy to do perfect photos. Um, yeah, that's my answer. The patio of the
That's so
lions. Yeah.
the Party of the Lions. It is. I mean, I think for all of us in our generation, I I don't know if in your history book in when you were a kid, but in my history book, the cover of the book was the Patio of the Lions.
Is that right? Which
Yeah.
one?
So to me, it's one of those places that it's like when I saw it for the first time, I was like, hey, I
Yeah,
know
but
this dude
what
from
what
high school.
book? What book was it? Because then it's your
It was a
school.
history book, but I
Oh,
don't remember
history.
what year.
All right.
Who knows? It
But
was
it was a history book.
yeah, it was my history book in school when I
Mm,
was a kid. So
yeah,
probably,
yeah.
yeah. So that's a beautiful place. Yeah.
Perfect. All righty. So, Francisco, eh,
Well,
yeah, any more questions?
nah, not for today. Not for today.
Okay, but
Well,
what about you? What's your favorite spot?
my favorite spot. Oh, I was gonna.
You cannot say the Patio of the Lions. I'm
I
sorry.
cannot say the
I
Patio of
feel
the
that
Lions.
now.
Okay, so when you go to the fortress,
Yeah.
okay, in the fortress, there's a big bastion all the way at the beginning, but you have
Hmm.
to take a little steps to the left.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you go to the left and you see a garden on a cliff where you get to see Sierra Morena Mountains all
Oh
the way
yeah.
at the back, and you get to see the city of Granada underneath you.
Wait a minute. You mean Sierra Nevada?
Oh, Sierra Nevada. Sorry, Sierra Morena, Sierra Nevada.
Sierra
I
Nevada
mean,
mountains. Yeah.
Sierra Nevada. So to me, getting to see, you go from this fortress, all these strong structures, suddenly you go some stairs up and you see this beautiful, delicate garden with the cliff, with the mountains. And if you go early spring where there's still snowed, you see the
Oh.
white and the city underneath. It's like the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I mean, this is
Mm.
like, I could live in this little corner. And every time I go to Alhambra, I always, you, last times I've been working with groups. I always let the group follow our local guide. You guys go, 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 go. And I stay behind in that little corner and I sit down for 1 minute in silence, just listening to the wind and the birds. And oh, it's
Mm.
my favorite place in the whole Alhambra.
Yeah. So as you see, guys, it's really difficult to choose one spot. I have that very clear because I mean the patio of the lions is really impressive, but that doesn't take any importance, beauty, and historical meaning to the rest of the complex. Because I mean, you go into the room where Isabel, the Catholic monarch, signed the contract with Christopher Columbus to be sponsor for the first journey. It's kind of goosebumpy,
Yeah. I
when
mean,
you're there and you say, really? These two, we were here in this
to
room
me, yeah.
just
I mean,
signing
you're
that?
not
Oh, yeah.
studying history. You are in history. It's
You
like
are there.
mind
Yeah.
blowing to
You
me.
are
It's
there.
like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is true. It is true. Okay, well, guys out there, if you want to share with us your impressions of the Alhambra when you have been there, if you have been there, or if you want to just, I mean, there is a book by Washington Irving called The Tales of the Alhambra. Um, you have to be patient with that book. Don't forget, it's written in a way, very romantic way, and it took me a while to have it finished, I have to say, but I think that the effort was worth to me because it helped me to understand some things. But if you want to share also your photos as well, please send it to us to SpanishLoops@gmail.com.
We would love to see them.
Hmm.
That if you have already been, if you haven't been to the Alhambra, there's an amazing way for you to discover Alhambra, which is Jorge, with your tour, Essence of Andalusia. Obviously, you have to sleep in Granada, and obviously, you have to go to the Alhambra with that tour.
Yeah, that's right. And the name of the tour specifically, if you Google, is The Essence of Southern Spain, and it's in my webpage. And yeah, of course, I'm taking you to Granada. Uh, we're going to go through I mean, the blockbusters, you have to visit them, but also there is some other parts of the Granada experience that not many people does. And I want you to discover that when you go into my website. Okay?
So if you go to his website, Jorge's website is travelingwithjorge.com. Really worth a trip to Spain with Jorge because it is from the hands of an insider and nobody shows Andalusia because it's your hometown. You are from Malaga. You are
Yeah.
from Andalusia. it is your passion. It is the best way to discover a places with a real local, and that is Jorge. So if you want to check on that, once again, travelingwithjorge.com.
Thank you, Francisco.
Everybody, thank you very much, Jorge. It's been a great pleasure discovering the Alhambra with you today. I shall see you next week.
I'll see you next week. Adios, chicos. Bye-bye.
Adios, amigos.
And as usual, we want to thank all our listeners for being there every week, letting us sharing our talks. Follow us in Spanish Loops in Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or your favorite platform.
And in Instagram, you can find us as the Spanish Loops Podcast, no spaces, all together. If you want to find us the quickest way, just Google Spanish Loops Podcast and you will find us. Hasta la vista, amigos.
See you next week.